In examining the human experience, one realizes that perfection appears in many forms for many people. What is perfection for one may not be perfection for another. Beauty, brains, brawn, honesty, loyalty, intelligence, flawless flesh, physical symmetry, sexual stamina, quick wit, compassion, and lust. What are the qualities that define perfection? Perspective. In the end, if there were a type of mate one could have, one could choose, perhaps create, that human being would likely encompass enhanced qualities of intelligence, beauty, and physical stamina. Almost any human has a wish list, and I think we all have the same one. How we view the potential candidates on our wish lists is somewhat subjective. Although intelligence and stamina are measurable, physical beauty or handsomeness is a more subjective commodity. Is it possible to find one human being with enhanced qualities of intelligence, beauty, and stamina? What lengths would I go through to find such a mate? Would it ever be possible to create one mate out of 3 or more? Or would it be more preferable to have a polygamous arrangement to satisfy each facet of desire as it arises? What would I provide in return? After all, there needs to be an exchange to keep the universal laws of equilibrium and balance. My undying love and loyalty, a home, financial stability, and endless nights of ecstasy would be part of their own personal paradise. I think it could be an equal trade if I can find just the right specimens. My journals and observations will record the emotional and physical progress of my latest experiments. This journal will contain my more subjective observations. There is another book filled with my more detailed calculations, charts, and formulas. The 2 books remain separate in case of damage or theft. And so my new quest begins. Experiment number 698. Specimen 1. When I first spied him across the room, I suspected he would indeed be a worthy candidate for experiment number 698. It was indicated by a punch in my solar plexus. The visuals were perfection, no question. Until I met him, exchanged verbiage with him, and interacted with him, I couldn't quite be certain if he would be as intelligent as I anticipated. There he stood, long and lanky, in the doorframe that connected the party room to the hallway. His shoulders slightly slouched as he drew in his cigarette, blue eyes staring directly at me. He watched me, hypnotic glittering eyes, observing my every movement. Calculating. Predatory. The idea of it amused me. His youth was intoxicating. The fact that anyone dared to smoke inside at a party anymore was also an indication that this rebel with a pen could be just what the doctor ordered. The chattering noises and laughter of our mutual academic friends drinking around us faded from my consciousness as I saw only him. Lion to prey, Tony to Maria, Dr. Frankenfurter to his Rocky, Dr. Miriam Frederick to Arthur Scott Gravenhurst. I walked towards the honored guest, prim in my 3-piece gray skirt suit and sky-high stilettos, a predatory slink in my gait. He kept his stance in the doorframe as I stepped past him, lightly brushing his chest with my elbow on the way to the patio. Summer air was warm on my face. A light breeze rippled through the mature trees that lined the gardens of the faculty building. He followed me. Dr. Miriam Frederick, I said as I held out my hand to him. He took it, and instead of shaking it, he lightly brushed his lips to it. Scott Gravenhurst. Charmed, he said, and released my hand. Ah, yes, our visiting guest, I said, pretending to stare around for someone more important. I waved towards a nobody and turned my attention back to Specimen 1. Yes, I'm here for a few days, he said. His gaze traveled from my carefully slicked-backed bobbed hair, my full red lips, and then down my sleek figure. When his attention returned to my eyes, he stammered, very slightly. My green contacts were working their ethereal magic. Miss Frederick, he said. I licked my lips, breathing in the sweetness of the nervous sweat underneath his Jimmy Dean persona. Yes, Scott, I smiled coyly. Isn't the moonlight lovely tonight? He led me out further onto the patio. Toronto is beautiful this time of year, I told him. We have the most beautiful summers. Can you hear the leaves whisper? Yes, they're telling me that there are many secrets to be shared. He smoked his cigarette as we both stared at the stars and the moon. The murmurs of people farther in the gardens mingled with the light classical soundtrack that filled the ancient halls of the old faculty building. He began to recite a poem. I joined in, and we laughed together. After several poems, we stopped, and the distant murmuring and tinkling of glasses became backdrop ambience once more. I guess another drink is in order, he said, noting my empty glass. Most definitely, I said, and slipped my hand through his as we navigated through the clumps of people. I was as tall as he was. My shoes were so high. The view of people giving me darting glances was easier to see elevated above most. There were a few raised eyebrows aimed in my direction, but I didn't mind. My nights with various colleagues left different imprints, even years later. I stopped mingling with my cohorts long ago, as it became apparent that some people can't split their alliances to different compartments of their lives. Complications and emotional drama only waste time that can be better focused on making progress in one's field. Even wives can't seem to forgive me, even though I never wanted their spineless wonders for more than a few hours. But my importance to the university is incalculable, so the disenchanted put up with my idiosyncrasies. If not for me and most of the people in this room, there wouldn't be grant money for parties, studies, renovations, and home laboratories. Behavior systemic neurological studies is in big demand in these times of psychopaths and terrorists. So we all keep our secrets and each other's. I smiled at my conquest as I let Specimen 1 order me another glass of wine, and we found a nook in the room to stare out at the party. University bigwigs gossiped in little cliques, whispering, no doubt mostly about me. Likely seeing the innocent act of Specimen 1 bringing me a glass of wine as me luring him into my lair. Which I am, of course, but it's not seemly to be gossiping about me right in front of my face. Your peers? Specimen 1 asked as he caught me frowning. Colleagues, perhaps, I said, drinking deeply from the wine he gave me. However, most of my friends aren't from the university, and my colleagues rarely see me. I do the majority of my work in my home laboratory. More convenient. Oh, he said. What do you do? I'm a scientist, but I love to read, which is why I'm here tonight. I started to walk so that we weren't trapped in a corner. I love to mingle with authors and publishers. I also love to go dancing. Clubs, parties, probably not really the run-of-the-mill geek you conjured up in your mind. You're too beautiful to be a scientist, he said. His youthful earnest slipped out for a moment from the too cool for school author pose. You're very kind, I said. I've always been intrigued by mature women, he said. My dear writer boy did not disappoint. He was indeed the classic womanizer. My heart raced as he spoke. He had a wonderfully crisp accent that I could have listened to for hours. He was only in town for a few days, a special guest author speaker at the university as part of a seminar series. We easily bantered about books. His face was lean and had an air of sadness about it. He writes about dark things, maybe because he's lived them, or maybe now that he's drawn such ideas with his fantasies, they haunt his reality. It will be interesting to find out. And I will find out. The more we drank, the more ideas we seemed to share. I was deliciously warm, lightheaded, and fidgeting in hormonal overdrive from Specimen One's pheromones. Tell me about your next book, I asked him. What is it about? I just signed a 3-book deal with a major publisher to write about a fictional dark world of psychological madness. How delightful, I nodded. Tell me about your experiments, Doctor, he whispered, tilting my head up with his fingers tucked under my chin. I stared into his eyes as the warmth of his soft lips lightly brushed mine. Come with me, and I'll show you, I said, taking his hand and leading him out of the party room and down the hallways. The fluorescent lights buzzed and hummed noisily as my heels clicked along the marble tiles. I passed 3 doors and stopped at the 4th. I was in luck. The small staff bathroom was open, complete with 2 comfortable chairs and a table. I pulled him in and locked the door behind us. If you'd like to read more about what happens between the good doctor and Specimen 1, Specimen 2, Specimen 3, and who knows who else comes wandering into the laboratory, pick up the book, Captured Souls, compiled by Sèphera Girón from the Notes and Journals of Dr. Miriam Frederick. I hope you have enjoyed this little taste of Captured Souls, and I look forward to seeing you around the laboratory.